So James and I are colleagues through Severna Park Arnold, Greater Severna Park Arnold Chamber of Commerce, and we met by way of a group that we are in, and immediately I saw that James was a cybersecurity expert. I'm pushing cyber liability insurance at this time, and it's very important for companies to kind of collaborate that are in this type of field. So last week with this Colonial Pipeline breach, cyber breach, has really brought a lot of this information to the forefront as far as how important and how critical a cyber policy is, not only to have cyber experts behind doing the hardware and the software, but also to have a cyber liability policy when and if a breach happens. So James, I mean, just tell us a little bit about, as far as, now that's obviously a large business there, Colonial Pipeline. How important is it for a small business to have a security profile?
It's quite important, Lou. The challenge of small businesses is that they don't have a security department usually. You know, companies like Colonial Pipeline, we know, have all the resources of the government behind them. Every single cybersecurity expert out there was ready, just waiting for the phone call to say, "Hey, here I am. You know, let me help any way I can." Small businesses don't have that. You know, small businesses are usually living sometimes month to month. They don't budget for a security breach of any kind of magnitude. And so it's even more important for small businesses to really invest in their security, because it's a lot cheaper to protect themselves than it is to clean up after the damage has been done. We know, you know, I think the number is like 68% of small businesses have go out of business when 1 year after being breached. So they need that protection, and it's multi-layer protection. It's making sure they have strong password policies in place. It's make sure they're training their employees to understand what a phishing message is. We don't know the details yet of the Colonial Pipeline as far as how they got in. We have some speculations. Some of that analysis is going to be done, is still being done, and probably won't be released for a while yet. You know, it may have been as simple as somebody opening a phishing message and completely compromising the network. So you need those pieces to tell your employers, so your employees learn what is a legitimate message and what's not. It's about having, you know, firewalls in place. It's about having your systems patched. You know, a good percentage of breaches come through exposed vulnerabilities. Remote desktop server is one of the biggest ones right now. The RDP alone, from 2020 to the start of the COVID pandemic, the number of attacks increased 300% for that.
Right.
And so it's a multi-layer protection, and having it's having those pieces in place together, and constantly monitoring those systems to make sure, okay, yes, our antivirus is up to date. Okay, why is this machine not patched? What's going on with that one? And so those are protections that are usually fairly simple to put into place. Yes, it does take some money, but it also just takes a constant awareness and understanding the importance of security for small businesses.
So even a small breach from one standalone computer can affect an entire network and can basically, let's say that we're talking about maybe a 50 to a 100 employee company, and they have one person that either opens up
that's the door in. That's
right.
All it takes sometimes. That's the door in for that bad guy to get into your network, and from there just keep going. And what we see often is for ransomware, like we see with Colonial, they're usually in the network for sometimes months. They're doing their analysis, they're mapping your network out. There's in past breaches, we have found that the bad guys had better mapping and better understanding of the network than the IT companies did.
Right.
And so, but they get in there, they understand your network, they know where your backups are at. You know, if you're not air gapping your backups, then they're going to delete them. Or the reason that's why you need them air gapped, so they can't get to the cloud-based versions. And by the time you even know they're in there, it's usually when they launch their ransomware attack. The ransomware, when you get the big screen and say your computer files are all locked, that's usually the last stage of their attack.
Right. And so, like, what we've seen this week is that, a large company like Colonial Pipeline, they're delivering 45% of the East Coast oil. Okay, the federal government has a major responsibility in ensuring that this company here stays afloat. Okay, they have, you touched on the resources that they have. Federal government, every probably cybersecurity expert working 24/7 on getting their systems up to date and having the cash, if they can't do it, to basically pay the ransom, what they ultimately did. I mean, small businesses, are they going to have those type of resources?
No, not at all. That's where companies like myself, Golden Consulting, come in and try to provide those protections in place. But yeah, it's still not going to be the small business with 7 or 8 employees, or even 15 or 20 employees. They're not going to have the government resources at their disposal. Granted, the FBI and CISA will provide some help in the event of a breach, but not physical labor. They'll provide guidelines.
Right.
They want you to report the breach to them, but you're still, small business is still on their own. So.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, as far as when I first started selling cyber liability policies and cyber liability insurance, the focus was really on protecting customer data. Healthcare companies, I mean, we all saw the Target breach where millions of credit card files were breached. And yes, for a company to ensure their clients' personal data is obviously important, but from what I've noticed, that's not really what the trend is as far as these cyber criminals go. And you touched on it; they want ransomware. And can you just tell us, as far as define what ransomware really is?
Yeah. I guess it's probably good to step back. Ransomware is as a basic is somebody holding your files literally for ransom. They want payment. They encrypt your files so you can't read them. They want payment to give you the key to say, okay, now you can go back and unlock your files. The ransomware guys have gotten smarter, unfortunately, and have taken it a step further. Like I said, they're usually in your network for sometimes months now. And before they actually launched a ransomware attack, they're actually copying your data off your network. And then they're encrypting your data. And so now it's a 2-part ransom. One part is, if you want your files unlocked and want that key, you need to pay us. The second part is, you want us to not release your files to the public, you need to pay us.
Right.
So, and if you refuse to pay the first one, then they go ahead and release your files to the public, which even for any kind of firm, having customer files released to the internet at that point, one, if it's a doctor's office, then you're in HIPAA violations. Any kind of other company, it could be PCI compliance issues. But biggest it's customer loss of trust.
And can't a company be fined as far as healthcare records go? Can't they be fined for each individual release of information?
Yeah, I've heard numbers of like $150,000 per record, and so for a typical doctor's office.
So like a doctor's office, a healthcare, even a dentist's office, they release. They may have hundreds of clients throughout the years. May not even be current patients, but just patients that they've had in previous years. If all that information gets released, maybe you're talking thousands of records, multiply that times whatever fines that the federal government is going to come down on you by not protecting your HIPAA laws and your HIPAA information could wipe out a company as far as that goes, right?
Yeah, and then there's still the cost of, like I said, if your customers have lost trust in you, and if at that point they may stop doing business with you.
Right.
So the costs far exceed of any kind of protection, any type of protection you could have put in place, it pales in comparison to the cost.
Right, and then what really excites me and what I really wanted to get involved with you for is because I've tried to secure relationships with cybersecurity experts, and there's more of a it's, you know, you're not going to penetrate my network type thing. So it's more of a, hey, look, you know, I don't have confidence to my client to build his security network if I you know, am possibly predicting, you know, a breach and the need for a cyber liability policy. I mean, it's just, that's just not a correct way to think, right? I mean, like, because no matter how strong you can build a network, you can always maybe, you know, predict a breach or, you know, what, you know, as far as...
Well, and that's why I love working with you, Lou, because you and I are on the same page about that. I think it's kind of arrogant for any IT company to say, no, we're going to protect your network so well you don't need the cyber insurance. We got to keep in mind, these are often, the hackers are a lot of times either nation states with huge resources behind them, or like in this case of even this dark side,
Right.
they're still huge organizations. I mean, they actually have a better customer service than a lot of IT companies do.
Right.
And so for any IT company, I think the best thing is to say, look, we're going to protect your network. You know, you could disguise the limit for how much you want to spend to protect it, but we also have to realize that there's always, the threats are constantly changing, just like any kind of other insurance, let's bring the insurance in and have it as a backup there. You know, kind of pray whenever you need it, but at least it's there,
right,
for that protection level.
And as far as dark side goes, now, I mean, all the evidence has not come out, and the FBI is obviously investigating this Colonial Pipeline breach, but they pretty much think that these Russian hackers are, you know, not more of really, they're just doing it for money. The greedy aspect of it. They really, apparently, what they're saying is they really didn't care about, you know, the damage that it costs, that you can't, you know, you're waiting in line for an hour or whatever. But I mean, touch on dark side, and then you know, how they're writing the software that they sell to other cyber criminals. I mean, you enlightened me on that, and I was like, yeah, man, that makes perfect sense. They're writing the software and selling it so they can create all these other breaches.
Yeah, ransomware as a service, and that's what's become it. Is there are organizations, you know, and I use organization because they are structured as such. They have their customers. They actually have customer support hotlines. If you're a client of theirs and purchase their software for attacks, they will help you to support them. And so, but to your point, yeah, in this case, DarkSide came out and said our goal is money. You know, we don't. Our plan wasn't to hurt society. We don't care about politics or geopolitics. We're just in it for the money, which is really should scare every business out there, because at some point, I always tell my customers, you've got money, they want it, they don't care who you are, you know.
Right.
If you're, you know, collateral, in this case, you know, a major pipeline, it doesn't matter. Because, you know, it wasn't a targeted attack to say, we want to take down the gas, you know, supply in the United States. It was, no, we just want your money.
Right.
So,
yeah, and you know, as far as the money aspect of it goes, you know, after a breach happens is kind of where the cyber liability policy would come into effect. And, you know, what we're seeing now is in the year 2021, and this is coming right from the federal government, I saw a stat that cyber crimes are up 300%, costing almost $350 million to not only large businesses. And again, you know, we talk about Colonial Pipeline, and it's on everybody's radar now because they're a huge company and the breach of it. But again, you know, we're talking about this small businesses that can become, you know, really affected by it.
And the point I want to make sure small businesses understand is because it becomes a myth that, you know, we see about the Targets, we see about the Home Depots, we see the Equifaxes in the news, and, you know, the mom and pop shop down the street, you know, doing accounting services, or even, you know, maybe the two-person legal firm, kind of have this mentality of, okay, what's not going to happen to me because I'm not big enough to be a target. Well, no, they're the ones that just aren't being reported.
Right.
You know, they're not going to make national news. They're not going to make, you know, the $5 million payouts. You know, but they still may be paying the $120,000 which becomes a drop in a bucket compared to somebody like
Right,
Colonial.
and small businesses actually are being affected 43% of the time. So again, we really think that this is a large business type of thing where it's not going to happen to me. No, in fact, it actually absolutely could happen to your small business because predominantly that's where they're going.
Right. Well, and I think I actually made a post about this the other week, but it's kind of the analogy I use is who's going to be easier target if you've got somebody walking down the street, with a full complement of armed bodyguards, or the person walking down the street in the alleyway by themselves. Who's going to be easier target to attack?
Right.
Well, it's no different than in the digital world. The Equifax makes the news because they're huge, but it may have taken somebody, a hacker group, months and months to finally breach. Whereas the mom and pop shop are the low hanging fruit, so to speak.
So outside of having a clear cyber policy and everything, what I wanted to touch on is the is companies that enter into small business contracts, especially companies that are entering into small business contracts with local governments, county governments, and obviously the federal government. As a small business owner yourself, and you provide a contract, one of the policies that you're going to need is your general liability policy. As far as going forward, do you agree with my conclusion that not only are businesses, and again, not only business to business contracts, but business to government contracts, how prevalent do you think that now governments are going to start requiring not only your general liability, but also have a cyber liability policy in place as well?
I think you're right on target there. I think it's going to be more common. I think even government or outside entities, I think, kind of, if I take a minute to go back to, say, the Home Depot and Target attacks, those were usually through third-party affiliates or subcontracting companies that had backdoors for different purposes. And so I think you're going to see even the bigger companies saying, hey, you're a smaller company, you want to do business with us as a supplier, as a vendor, you need to have, we need to know you got these protections in place as well.
Right. And as far as those protections go, I mean, you're talking about these huge costs. If you have to pay the ransom to release your database, what's that cost going to be? And they can put that number at any amount that they want. And it really boils down to, do you want to scrap your database and your information systems and start from scratch, or do you want to pay that ransom? I mean, am I off by saying that really this software that's developed by these cyber criminals is that good that you're at a business owner is literally stuck with those two options, either start from over or basically get the cyber liability policy to pay for it?
If they don't have the protections in place, good backups, and then yeah, they're pretty much limited to pay up or else.
Okay, well, listen, James, I really appreciate the fact that we've sat down and talked this and really getting this information out to people. And, for more information, you could definitely find me. Again, I'm Lou Facciponti with Lighthouse Insurance and Gambrels. And
James Golden with Golden Consulting, and find me at goldenconsulting.net on the web.
Yep, and I'm Lou at lighthouse-insurance.com.